The story of Pontius Pilate is shrouded in mystery, contradiction, and tragedy. As the Roman governor of Judea, he played a crucial role in one of history's most famous trials, the sentencing of Jesus of Nazareth to crucifixion. This decision would forever link Pilate's name with the crucifixion of Christ, casting a shadow over his life and legacy that ultimately led to his downfall. In historical texts, Pilate is portrayed as a man caught between the demands of his role as a Roman prefect and the political and religious tensions of Judea. While much of Pilate's life remains undocumented, accounts by Jewish historians like Flavius Josephus and Roman historians such as Tacitus provide glimpses into the complex and tumultuous world in which he governed. For a Roman governor, Pilate held considerable authority. Appointed by the Roman Empire, he was responsible for maintaining order, collecting taxes, and enforcing Roman law. Yet, governing Judea was no easy task. The province was a melting pot of cultural and religious fervor, with various groups, Pharisees, Sadducees, Zealots, each vying for power and influence. To them, Pilate was a foreign ruler enforcing a pagan empire's laws, and his methods often met with fierce resistance and resentment. Pilate's confrontation with Jesus was not the first time he found himself in conflict with the Jewish population. He had previously clashed with the Jewish leaders over the placement of Roman standards, decorated with images of the emperor, in Jerusalem. To the Jews, these symbols were idolatrous, violating the commandment against graven images. After intense protests, Pilate backed down, a rare concession for a Roman governor. This early incident foreshadowed the complex relationship he would have with the people he ruled. When Jesus was brought before Pilate, it was during the Jewish festival of Passover, a time of heightened tension in Jerusalem. The religious leaders accused Jesus of blasphemy, a crime punishable by death under Jewish law, but they needed Pilate's authority to carry out the execution. Pilate's initial reluctance to condemn Jesus is well documented in the Gospels, as he found no guilt in Jesus warranting the death penalty. But the Jewish leaders insisted, threatening to report Pilate to the emperor if he failed to act against a man they deemed a threat to Caesar. Caught between the demands of the religious leaders and his duty to maintain peace, Pilate ultimately ordered Jesus' crucifixion. This decision marked a turning point in Pilate's life. After the crucifixion, Pilate's reputation continued to decline. Although he had fulfilled the demands of the Jewish leaders, he had also sealed his fate by becoming complicit in the death of a man now revered as a prophet and Messiah. His role in the execution cast a permanent stain on his record, and subsequent events only added to his troubles. Pilate's fall from grace began almost immediately after the crucifixion. According to some early Christian writings, his conscience was troubled by his decision. Accounts in apocryphal texts and folklore suggest that Pilate was haunted by visions of Jesus and suffered greatly for his actions. Some texts portray him as a tragic figure plagued by guilt, wandering through life unable to escape the weight of his decision. Others suggest he sought redemption in his own way, but any attempts to reconcile his actions came too late. Following the death of Jesus, Pilate's rule over Judea became increasingly tenuous. Historical records indicate that he faced mounting criticism from the Jewish population and lost support from the Roman authorities. One notable incident that contributed to his downfall occurred several years after the crucifixion. Pilate ordered a brutal crackdown on a group of Samaritans who had gathered at Mount Gerizim, seeking what they believed to be sacred artifacts. Pilate viewed this gathering as a potential uprising, and his violent response led to significant casualties. The Samaritans, angered by the unnecessary bloodshed, petitioned the Roman governor of Syria, Lucius Vitellius, to intervene. Vitellius, recognizing the unrest in Judea, and perhaps already dissatisfied with Pilate's governance, removed Pilate from office and ordered him to Rome to answer for his actions. Pilate's journey back to Rome marked the beginning of his final chapter. The specifics of what happened to him after he returned to Rome are unclear, as historical sources diverge on his fate. Some suggest that Pilate faced trial for his actions in Judea, while others claim he was simply exiled, left to live out his days in disgrace. One of the more widely accepted theories is that Pilate was unable to bear the shame and dishonor he faced upon his return to Rome. According to the historian Eusebius, Pilate ultimately took his own life. Some sources say he did so under the orders of Emperor Caligula, who may have viewed Pilate as a liability and wanted to rid the empire of a governor whose actions had sparked unrest. Others suggest that Pilate's suicide was an act of desperation, a response to the overwhelming guilt and regret he felt for his role in the crucifixion of Jesus. Pilate's death did not mark the end of his story. In early Christian tradition, he became a symbol of moral weakness, a man who succumbed to the pressure of the crowd and failed to stand up for what he believed to be right. In some traditions, Pilate is seen as a tragic figure who paid the ultimate price for his failure to act justly. In others, he is condemned as a villain whose complicity in the death of Jesus was unforgivable. Over the centuries, legends about Pilate's fate continued to grow. In certain medieval legends, Pilate's body was thrown into the Tiber River, where it was said to disturb the waters, causing supernatural phenomena. According to one version, Pilate's body was later removed and cast into other rivers, each time bringing turmoil and unrest to the water. These stories depict Pilate as a restless soul, cursed to Rome in death as he had been tormented in life, unable to find peace because of his role in the crucifixion. In another legend, Pilate's spirit is said to haunt Mount Pilatus, a mountain in Switzerland that bears his name. According to folklore, he appears as a ghostly figure, wandering the mountain as punishment for his sins. Medieval pilgrims who visited the mountain claimed to hear strange noises and see ghostly apparitions, which they attributed to Pilate's restless soul. Within the Christian tradition, Pilate's legacy serves as a cautionary tale. His story is a reminder of the consequences of moral compromise, of the dangers of choosing political expediency over justice. Yet, some interpretations of Pilate's life also offer a more sympathetic view, portraying him as a man trapped by circumstance, a tragic figure who struggled to balance his duty as a Roman governor with his conscience. In the Eastern Orthodox Church, Pilate is sometimes remembered as a figure of repentance. Certain apocryphal texts suggest that Pilate and his wife converted to Christianity later in life, seeking forgiveness for their role in Jesus' crucifixion. In this narrative, Pilate is not a villain but a sinner who, like many others, sought redemption. The story of Pontius Pilate's life and death reflects the complexity of his role in history. He was a man of power, yet ultimately powerless to escape the consequences of his actions. His involvement in the crucifixion of Jesus cast a long shadow over his life, one that continued to haunt him until his death. Whether viewed as a tragic figure, a villain, or a man seeking redemption, Pilate's legacy endures as a reminder of the profound impact of a single choice. Pontius Pilate's death, like much of his life, is veiled in ambiguity. Some see it as divine retribution, others as the tragic end of a man tormented by guilt. His fate serves as a stark illustration of the moral and ethical dilemmas faced by those in power. In the end, Pilate's life became inseparable from his role in the crucifixion of Jesus, a moment that would shape his legacy for centuries to come.